are the biggest UFC underdogs to win this year so far? First off, the best card for betting underdogs was Roman Dolidze taking on Marvin Vettori in the rematch. On that card, as you can see, 6 underdogs won. Roman Dolidze won in the main event. Chidi Njokuani got a KO against Elizeu dos Santos as the Finns hammer lock. Brendson Ribeiro, Kimura Diyar Nagaze. Carlos Vera head kicked and then submitted Josias Musasa in round 1, which I also bet. Sam Hughes won a decision against Stephanie Luciano, and Priscilla Cachoeira slept Josie Nunez in round 1. 6 underdogs cashed. Of course, the worst card to bet underdogs was UFC Kansas City. Only one underdog won, which was Abus Magomedov against Michel Pereira. And even in that fight, it's not even like Abus did anything to show that he was a good underdog. It's just that Michel Pereira was extremely flat in that matchup. But here's some underdog stats. There have been 213 total UFC fights. 65 underdogs have won, so they're not winning at a 50-50 split. On average, 4 underdogs win per event, and only 15 plus 200 and higher underdogs have won, and in this video we're going to be going over all 15 of them. Getting us started right at the gate, Ricky Simón cashed as a plus 205 underdog against Javid Basharat. He got a round 1 KO on him, and obviously, as you can see, I did not bet Ricky Simón. I did not pick Ricky Simón, and Tapology also didn't really pick Ricky Simón. 21% of people picked Ricky Simón to win. So as you can see, I wasn't totally in the wrong for picking Basharat here, but Ricky Simón, if you cashed on that, let me know in the comments, because that was a pretty big knockout. Julianna Miller cashed as a plus 210 underdog against Ivana Petrovic in a sluggish decision. You know, typical WMMA where it goes to decision 99% of the time, and then it's up to the judges' scorecards who wins. The judges decided that Julianna Miller was going to be the victor, and usually when the odds are like plus 200, on Tapology, you see kind of like a 20-80 split, but on this one, only 7% of pickers picked Julianna Miller on Tapology. I, of course, also picked Ivana Petrovic, therefore I did not bet Julianna Miller and win piles like the rest of the 7%. I guess Julianna Miller was a good dog to pick. Ode Osbourne cashed as a plus 210 underdog against Louis Garul at UFC Vegas 105. He got the round 2 knockout, and he just outworked and outclassed Garul the entire fight. This was a great pick if you're a picking person. And Tapology also fell for the trap. 18% of people picked Ode Osbourne. I was part of the 82 that picked Garul, of course, and I did not bet Ode Osbourne. I did not, rake in the piles from this matchup, but looking back on it in hindsight, Ode Osbourne was a great underdog. Luis Garul was making his UFC debut. He won against Nick Piccinini on the Contender Series, so that's like a questionable win right there. Ode Osbourne had all the UFC experience. This would have been a solid underdog pick. Cannonier cashed as a plus 210 underdog against Gregory Rodriguez in their main event fight at UFC Vegas 102. And this one is a little more even split, 75-25. It was for a main event. So usually when there's high profile fights, you see a more even split for Tapology picks. Of course, picked Gregory Rodriguez because I'm a sheep. I did not bet Jared Cannonier in this matchup. Gregory Rodriguez did knock him down twice in the first round, so I thought I was on my way to Cash City, but Cannonier turns it up in the later rounds, gets the round 4 KO. So if you had Jared Cannonier here, let me know in the comments. He was like 42 years old. It was a huge age gap, so that I guess at middleweight, it doesn't really matter if you're Jared Cannonier. So, yeah. Nasrat Haqparast cashed as a plus 215 underdog against Esteban Ribovic, and it seems like every Nasrat fight is fought on insanely close margins. Like, when it comes down to the judges' scorecards, it's basically a coin flip who won the fight, Nasrat or his opponent. Same thing happened against Jared Gordon. They gave the nod to Nasrat, and then in this one, they basically matched each other on significant strikes. And coin flip judges, the judges gave it to Nasrat. 15% of Tapology picked Nasrat to win. I, of course, did not pick Nasrat. Grok AI actually did pick Nasrat as their lock of the week when I was doing Grok AI picks back in the day. But overall, I don't think I would have picked Nasrat in hindsight. It's just the fact that the line got a little too wide. Maybe it should have been Nasrat plus 120, and maybe... Yeah, I have to get better at betting. Andre Petroski cashed as a plus 235 underdog against Rodolfo Vieira at UFC Vegas 102, and I actually did bet Andre Petroski. This is the first underdog on the list where I picked them and I bet them. I was just confident that if this stayed a striking battle, Petroski would have the better striking. And guess what? It stayed a striking battle for 3 rounds, and Petroski had the better striking. I was in the 15% that picked Petroski to win. Rodolfo Vieira, he wasn't a huge favorite, but he was too big of a favorite for what the odds were suggesting. You know, Rodolfo Vieira is a jiu-jitsu guy, so if the fight stays standing, if he can't get it to the ground against a superior wrestler, he's going to lose a decision, and that's exactly what happened here, and I cashed the plus 235 ticket. And Bruno Lopez cashed as a plus 235 underdog against Magomed Gadzhiesulov at UFC Vegas 101, the first card of the year. I, of course, did not bet that. I thought Bruno Lopez was chinny. I thought he didn't really have much to offer, but at the same time, I also thought Magomed didn't have much to offer. Magomed has no KO power. Magomed has fake Dagestani wrestling. He's not a real Dagestani. So what does he really bring to the table? He can slog a fight out, but turns out Bruno Lopez is better at slogging fights out than Magomed. 12% of Tapology picked Bruno Lopez. I was not a part of the 12%. So if you cashed on Lopez here, it was a pretty sharp pick. The line was way too wide. It was suggesting that Magomed would go out there and get a finish. Magomed is not really a potent finisher like that. So in hindsight, maybe I should have sprinkled on Lopez, but of course I didn't. And on to the next one. Rong Zhu cashed as a plus 280 underdog against Cody Steele at UFC 312. He basically fraud checked the guy. Cody Steele is known to be a big wrestler, big grappler, but in this fight, he just decided he was going to keep it standing for 3 rounds against a pretty decent striker in Rong Zhu, and Rong Zhu just won the striking exchanges and won a clean decision. I did not bet Rong Zhu. I was under the impression that Cody Steele would actually, implement his wrestling, and he did nothing of the sort. So what can you take away from this? Well, if you expect a prospect that wrestles to go out there and wrestle, you should not expect that. You should only expect seasoned veterans who are wrestlers to go out there and wrestle. It seems like nowadays, if you're a prospect and you're good at wrestling, a.k.a. Bo Nickel, a.k.a. Cody Steele, a.k.a. Rinya Nakamura, you just don't wrestle. I don't understand it. Tapology was incorrect again. 14% picked Rong Zhu to win. I, of course, did not bet it. As you can kind of hear the salt in my words. If you're a wrestler and you got to the big dance wrestling, you should wrestle. And Cody Steele did nothing of the sort. Kaue Fernandes cashed as a plus 300 underdog against Guram Kutateladze at UFC London on the first fight of the card. I actually did bet Kaue Fernandes, so I was there. I knew it. I knew it straight from the jump. Guram is a fraud. Guram is not good at any area of MMA. He's just a muscle hamster, really. He's very veiny, very big, but when it comes to striking volume, he has none. When it comes to striking power, not the best. When it comes to grappling wrestling, he wasn't able to implement it in this fight. And Tapology, 8% picked Kaue Fernandes. I am a part of the 8%, so give me some kudos here. Who was picking Kaue Fernandes? This guy. Reinier De Ridder cashed as a plus 300 underdog against Bo Nickel at UFC Des Moines, and I just went on the whole spiel where if you're a prospect and wrestling is your base, more often than not, for some reason, when you go into big fights, you just don't go to your wrestling. I just don't understand it. You just keep it standing. Even in this one, Reinier De Ridder, Bo Nickel was trying to wrestle. Reinier De Ridder was just stronger. Reinier De Ridder got top position on Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel was sitting in guard on his back for a lot of this fight up until he got knocked out in round 2. 37% picked Reinier De Ridder to win. This is the highest Tapology percentage to pick a big underdog like this on the entire list. So shout out to the 37% that thought Bo Nickel would get fraud checked. I think that, 37%, that's a little egregious. I think it's so high because there's a lot of Bo Nickel haters out there, and they just picked Reinier De Ridder because they wanted to see some chaos. Reinier De Ridder, the price was there. The price was right. Probably should have picked him. Probably should have bet him. Didn't do either. One day I'll understand. One day I'll understand what a good dog looks like. Chris Duncan cashed as a plus 300 underdog against Jordan Vucenic at UFC London. It's funny because on this card, I had a $10 to win $20,000 parlay, and I had a Shauna Bannon sub, I had Alexia Tainara sub, I had Christian Leroy Duncan sub. That was my problem. I picked the wrong Chris Duncan to win by sub. Christian Leroy Duncan won a decision against Andrei Puliev. Chris Duncan won by sub. So if I had just taken out the Leroy, I would be 20K richer sitting in front of you right now. But of course I did not do that. I thought Jordan Vucenic was good. But the thing is, I thought Guram Kutateladze was bad. So with that logic, Vucenic beats someone who was bad. Therefore, if Vucenic is kind of fraudulent, Chris Duncan has the UFC experience. I should have, connected the dots in my MMA math calculator. I did not do that, unfortunately. 13% of people picked Chris Duncan, so the percentage is higher than normal. Usually it's in the sub 10%, so shout out to the 13% that won here. I, of course, did not bet Chris Duncan. I picked Vucenic, put him in a parlay like an absolute moron, like an absolute sheep. I'm stuck in the matrix. Someone let me out. I can't escape. Can't escape the matrix. Just keep losing. Yeah, shout out to you guys if you bet Chris Duncan. Let me know in the comments if you have a Chris Duncan by sub ticket, because that was what I should have had, and I didn't have it. Brendson Ribeiro cashed as a plus 350 underdog against Dr. Nergaze at UFC Vegas 104. In this fight, Nergaze was just hesitant to throw on the feet, so Ribeiro was actually getting the better of the striking exchanges. Nergaze brings it to the mat. Brendson Ribeiro hits him with his classic Kimura, and Nergaze just accepts the Kimura and gets submitted. So as a plus 350 underdog, plenty of value there. Brendson Ribeiro, the one thing you can say about him is that he's very chinny, but he is all action. He's all force. He marauds forward. Nergaze just had no striking prowess to find the chin. 8% of pickers picked Brendson Ribeiro in this fight. I was not a part of the 8%. It's funny because I am a Brendson Ribeiro fan. Brendson Ribeiro is a former Finns hammerlock. He did lose against Ming Yang Zhang. That's when I had him as the hammerlock, of course. Got knocked out brutally in round 1. I haven't picked Ribeiro since. And since, he's actually been winning. He beat Kyle Machado. He beat this guy. He's on a pretty good run right now. So shout out to you if you picked him in this match. Muin Gafurov cashed as a plus 550 underdog against Rinya Nakamura at UFC 311. And this just goes back to what I was saying. If you're a prospect and your base is wrestling and it's 2025, you probably just won't use your wrestling for no reason. No reason at all. You just won't go to the wrestling. You want to keep it standing. Rinya Nakamura is known for his wrestling. He's a prospect. Guess what? He decided to keep it striking for 3 rounds with Gafurov. Same thing with Bo Nickel. Same thing with Cody Steele. These wrestling prospects just don't want to wrestle. And 6% picked Muin Gafurov to win. It's a plus 550 underdog. I'm expecting, less than 10%, but 6% to pick Gafurov to win, that's pretty nuts. I, of course, did not pick Gafurov. I did not bet him. I didn't bet Rinya Nakamura either, but dang, 6%. Carlos Vera cashed as a plus 600 underdog at UFC Vegas 104 against Josias Musasa. So if we're going to see a reoccurring theme here, all of the huge underdogs that have won in the recent slides, they're fighting prospects. They're fighting undefeated prospects. Josias Musasa, I believe, was undefeated. If not, he had like 1 loss. And Carlos Vera, he was just a lamb to slaughter. That's what it appeared to be on paper. However, I actually did bet, and I did pick Carlos Vera to win. I also bet Carlos Vera to win by sub. And guess what? He got the head kick right here, and then he subbed him. So I predicted this fight perfectly, and it was plus 600. So shout out to me. 6% again picked Carlos Vera. I was part of the 6%. Shout out to me. It seems that when there's an undefeated prospect going against someone who has like a couple UFC fights, you should just blindly pick the guy that has a couple UFC fights, because the prospect that's a huge favorite, you don't know their IQ. You don't know what they're going to do when they actually face some adversity. I mean, did you think Carlos Vera was going to bring adversity to Josias Musasa? I mean, I thought so. But it seems 94% of you guys did not. Then the biggest underdog to cash this year was Raoni Barcelos plus 750 at UFC 311. And this just goes back to what I've been saying about prospects. When you expect them to do well against a seasoned veteran, unless they're like Umar Nurmagomedov, or unless they're like, a Sean O'Malley, or someone that is going to actually make a run towards the title, more often than not, they get fraud checked, they get stomped out. Raoni Barcelos just had his way with Peyton Talbot the entire 15 minutes. He just out-wrestled him, outworked him on the feet, got the better of their striking exchanges. The age gap was, I think, like 8+ years in this matchup. Raoni Barcelos, he hasn't really looked like himself in his past couple fights, but he has a career performance in this one. And 2%! 2% of people picked Raoni Barcelos. 2%! There were 7,784 picks on this fight, and 2% picked Raoni Barcelos to win. That means, like, what, 100 people picked him to win? Out of 7,800? Like, and yeah, I also did not pick Raoni Barcelos, so I mean, if you're gonna get anything from this video, it's don't just blindly trust prospects at -500. Number one, don't just blindly trust a wrestler to wrestle if he's a huge favorite, and number three, if I pick an underdog, it's probably gonna lose.